Tonight, they're finally back on dry land after a fire on their cruise ship left them stranded at sea.
Everything just started shaking and rumbling, and I turned to Mark and I said, this is just not right.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a medical first. Doctors inject stem cells directly into this woman's brain to fight a deadly cancer. North Korea in focus, a rare look inside the secret society and the threat it poses to America. And a veteran's final battle to bring all his fallen comrades home.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. Their ship finally came in, and for the 4,500 passengers and crew, not a moment too soon. Conditions on board the Carnival Splendor were anything but luxurious after a fire knocked out power on Monday, leaving the massive cruise ship stranded in the Pacific. But today, after being pulled by 5 tugboats, it docked in San Diego. Many of the passengers are now laughing about their cruise to nowhere, but as John Blackstone reports, there was nothing funny about that fire on board.
After 3 helpless days at sea, the nearly 1,000-foot-long Carnival Splendor was pushed and pulled through San Diego's harbor. Most of the more than 3,000 passengers lined up on decks and balconies while the ship was nudged up to the pier. There was obvious relief that 3 days of cold showers and cold food was over.
No more sandwiches, please.
As passengers got off into a crowd of cameras and reporters, they told how early Monday morning the ship trembled, then lost all its power.
It actually just felt like an earthquake, and everything just started shaking and rumbling, and I turned to Mark and I said, this is not right.
The smell of smoke began to fill the huge ship.
They just said there was lots of smoke, but no fire.
Chris Harlan grabbed his video camera as smoke poured up, apparently from the engine room.
That can't be good.
Passengers were told to evacuate their rooms, but an announcement over the ship's PA system tried to be reassuring.
There's really no need to be by the lifeboats at the moment.
Life on board was transformed from luxurious to lousy. Was it an adventure or was it terrible?
It was camping on the ocean, and I hate camping. It started smelling like rotten milk. People were hoarding. We'd go down for breakfast and just grab a whole bunch of, fruit and boxes of cereal and stuff because we didn't want to go stand in, 2 or 3 hour line for lunch.
Carnival Cruise Line says everyone will get their money back, plus a free cruise if they want it.
In our 35 years, we've never had anything that's happened to this level.
But the company has not yet identified the cause. The National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating. Cruise industry critic Jack Hickey says any shipboard fire can quickly turn into a disaster.
Cruise ships can certainly be fire traps because, again, cruise ships are isolated. They're out on the ocean and there's no place to go.
But it seems for most of these passengers, the biggest disaster was the food.
I never saw a green bean sandwich before. I never saw hot dog salad. There's a lot of things.
Hot dog salad?
Yeah.
Bread with some beets and some cheese. Yeah. Mystery meats.
Yeah. Almost every passenger we talked to praised the crew for making the best of a bad situation. For the many on board who were marking special occasions like their honeymoon or their anniversary, they'll now remember the date for being stuck at sea. Katie?
John Blackstone in San Diego. John, a happy ending relatively, so thanks very much. Turning now to politics, 9 days after the midterm elections, Americans have a message for the new Congress and President Obama. Work it out. A CBS News poll out tonight shows 72% want Republicans in Congress to compromise on major issues. 78% say President Obama should compromise. Only 16% want him to stick to his positions. And what are the key issues? More than half want Congress to focus on the economy and jobs, far more than health care or any other issue. 40% of Americans tell us they're pleased with the results of the midterm elections and their expectations for the 112th Congress. About 4 in 10 expect the House and Senate to accomplish more than usual. About the same number expects them to accomplish less. President Obama, meanwhile, is in South Korea, day 7 of his Asian trip. He had some tough talk for the North on this Veterans Day, but on the issues of jobs, trade, and taxes, it was a day of disappointment and confusion. Chip Reed, who is traveling with the president in Seoul, explains.
In South Korea, the president saluted veterans of the Korean War and the 28,000 U.S. troops who still stand guard here today against a hostile nuclear-armed North Korea.
The United States will never waver in our commitment to the security of the Republic of Korea. We will not waver.
But that moment of national pride was followed by disappointment. A press conference that was supposed to be a celebration of a free trade agreement with South Korea fell flat as the talks continue to drag on.
We don't want months to pass before we get this done. We want this to be done in a matter of weeks.
The sticking point, cars. Last year, South Korea exported 476,000 cars to the U.S., but imported only 6,000 American cars. So far, South Korea has refused to bend to the president's demands.
The president's weak position domestically has made it very hard for him to be a leader internationally, particularly in the economic realm.
The president is also dealing with the harsh economic realities he'll confront when he returns to Washington, including an explosively controversial proposal from the chairman of his Debt Reduction Commission, loaded with painful budget cuts and tax hikes.
I set up this commission precisely because I'm prepared to make some tough decisions. I can't make them alone. I'm going to need Congress to work with me.
The president will also face a ferocious battle over the Bush tax cuts. During the campaign, he strongly opposed extending them for upper-income Americans. Today, though, the White House appeared to cave before the negotiations even began. The liberal base erupted in anger, forcing the president's advisors to spend the day furiously backpedaling. Tomorrow, the president heads to Japan for an economic conference and one last chance to try to convince Asian nations to open their markets to U.S. goods. Katie?
Chip Reed reporting from Seoul, South Korea. Chip, thank you. Now to another controversial issue, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which bans gays from serving openly in the military. The Pentagon recently asked active duty and reserve troops for their opinion. And today, CBS News reviewed the draft report. More than 70% of those who responded think lifting the ban on gays serving openly would have little or no impact. At the same time, 40% of Marines said they'd be concerned about serving with gays in combat. Meanwhile, in health news tonight, a medical first. Doctors injected embryonic stem cells into a woman's brain, hoping they'll fight her cancer. Close to 23,000 Americans are diagnosed with brain cancer every year, and more than half that number die. Ben Tracy met this pioneer patient and has an exclusive look at this groundbreaking procedure.
I've already agreed, so I'm walking forward.
Jen Vonks has been leaning on her family a lot lately. Just 3 weeks ago, doctors in her hometown of Seattle told her there was nothing more they could do to treat the tumor in her brain. They gave her 2 months to live.
It's a short time when they tell you that, wow. You wouldn't even believe how short it feels.
She didn't know that at this hospital near Los Angeles, Dr. Karen Abudi has been working on a revolutionary new cancer treatment for the very worst brain tumors called glioblastomas, the same kind Jen has. These types of tumors are so invasive that until now there's been no way to get large amounts of chemotherapy through the blood-brain barrier. But with stem cells, researchers now think they've found a way. Here's how. 10 million neural stem cells with a special enzyme are injected into the brain. The stem cells seek out and attach themselves to the tumors. The patient then takes a pill containing a non-toxic drug that enters the brain. When the drug interacts with the enzyme in the stem cells, it instantaneously creates an active chemotherapy drug. The hope is that the chemo will kill the tumors and leave healthy brain tissue alone.
The chemotherapy is never going toxic all over the body. It's just being made where the tumor cells are. So in that case, we should have a lot of less side effects.
It's worked in mice, but never been tried on a human until this week. Jen is patient number 1.
First in the world, I would prefer that there had been a few people going through before me. Bye, love you.
But Wednesday, on the morning of her surgery, she is ready.
I'm ready to get her done.
Her family says goodbye.
Bye, Jenny.
And over the course of the 4-hour procedure, those 10 million stem cells are sent into Jen's brain to try to fix it. It will be months before doctors know if it works.
It's like the first step on the moon, and it would just be the beginning.
Jen has some smaller steps in mind, completing a 75-mile walk around Seattle.
I will crawl it if I have to.
And she may also be giving thousands of people with brain tumors a reason to move forward and to hope. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Duarte, California.
And of course, we wish Jen all the best. An update now on a medical story we brought you last night, the kidney donor chain established by Jan and Garrett Hill. They save lives by matching donors with recipients. Since our story aired, Garrett says 204 people have signed up to donate a kidney and begin a new chain. On a normal day, just 2 people sign up. If you'd like to see the story or get involved, you can go to our website at cbsnews.com. And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, the veteran who will not stop fighting for his fallen brothers in arms. But up next, we go back to North Korea for a rare close-up look at the world's most secretive society. President Obama's visit to South Korea comes 60 years after the start of the Korean War. The fighting ended with an armistice 3 years later, but no peace treaty was ever signed with North Korea. The truth is, we know very little about the North, for decades the most reclusive nation on earth. But recently, the door opened ever so slightly when a CBS News team was allowed in to put in focus some of North Korea's mysteries. For nearly 60 years, communist North Korea has shut itself off from the world.
There is no place in the world like North Korea.
Seen from space, it's literally a black hole between the lights of China to the north and the Republic of Korea to the south.
When they decide it's time for the Western media to come in, it all happened in a matter of hours.
North Korea gave a CBS News team a 4-day window to attend Communist Party ceremonies in the capital of Pyongyang. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il would introduce his youngest son and heir, Kim Jong-un, to the world.
On our flight from Beijing to Pyongyang, an attractive 22-year-old North Korean flight attendant asked me where I was from. I told her, I'm from America, but I live in Japan. Right away, she snapped back, I hate America. I hate Japan. And then she politely asked me what kind of beverage I wanted to drink.
Will we see this kind of crowds? Excuse me, please. I'm trying to understand, that's all.
It almost feels like you're on the back lot of some Hollywood studio because you're driving by all of these stores and restaurants, but no one's ever in them.
I can still hear the sounds of the tapping on the ground of their boots. They may look like the Rockettes, but everybody's got guns.
Dissent is met with prison or death. North Koreans have no contact with the outside world. Their focus is President Kim Jong-il.
Nothing compares to what happens when Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un walk out. This sound goes through the crowd. This sort of woo, and they start all lifting their hands up. And I look at their faces, and they're all crying. And that's when you realize you're in something entirely and disturbingly unique.
Despite being backwards and bankrupt, North Korea has built as many as a dozen nuclear weapons and may be making more.
The real concern about North Korea's nuclear capacity is not that they're going to launch one, but that they're going to sell one.
According to a new UN report, North Korea sells $100 million worth of non-nuclear arms every year to countries with terrorist ties, like Iran and Syria. Money from the weapons sales goes into the pockets of North Korea's leadership, which is also linked to counterfeiting and money laundering.
North Korea, in some ways, is a cancer on Asia.
In the past, international aid in the form of food and medicine has gotten North Korea to stop its nuclear weapons program. But Pyongyang has repeatedly broken its promises right after it gets what it wants.
The trick for the United States and the Obama administration is how do you ensure that you aren't rewarding North Korea for its bad behavior?
Tensions are highest along the 160-mile demilitarized zone. On one side, UN forces, including 28,000 Americans. On the other, North Korea. Hidden in those hills are 11,000 artillery pieces aimed at South Korea's capital.
There are 22 million people in Seoul, 100,000 American citizens. They're all in range of North Korean artillery. Right now you have the country sort of being run by a man who's in his 60s and has already suffered a stroke. And now it's going to be turned over to a man who was in his 20s, about whom we know almost nothing.
Kim Jong-un will inherit a country in tatters. Starvation is chronic, killing as many as 2 million people since 1990. A third of the country's 23 million are undernourished.
Given the succession that is unfolding before our eyes in Pyongyang, I think what we're seeing are opportunities arise potentially to not only explore diplomacy with new figures in the regime, but also to see if there are new actors with whom we could deal.
But it's a giant neighbor that could have the final say.
Chinese leader Mao Zedong once said that China and North Korea were as close as lips and teeth.
And for now, China supports the Kim regime's grip on power.
First, there's the threat of hundreds of thousands of starving North Korean refugees flooding into northeast China. Second, a new unified Korea would likely be a U.S. ally, and that could bring the possibility of U.S. troops coming up through South Korea into North Korea, right up to the Chinese border.
Brides and grooms, fresh from their weddings, the first place they go is this monstrous statue of Kim Il-sung, the first leader and father of North Korea. And they go to be blessed.
From Kim Il-sung to his grandson, the anointed heir, one family ruling one nation since its creation more than 6 decades ago. And when we come back, movies were his life, a look back at the long career of Dino De Laurentiis. Google can be pretty handy. Hungry? It'll help you find a restaurant. Injured? A hospital is a click away. And if you're the police, it will even locate criminals for you. Complaints about suspected drug dealers on a corner in Brooklyn sent the NYPD to Google Street View to scout the neighborhood. And there they were. They set up a sting operation and nabbed the 3 suspects and their stash of heroin and marijuana in a nearby basement. In other news, Dino De Laurentiis was born to make movies. His career lasted 7 decades and included 2 Oscars. He produced more than 500 films, many of them unforgettable, like Death Wish. Charles Bronson's portrayal of a vigilante struck a chord in the 1970s, as did Serpico with Al Pacino as a corruption-fighting cop. De Laurentiis also produced the futuristic Barbarella starring Jane Fonda. He once told the LA Times, "Making movies is all about instinct. Nobody taught Picasso how to paint." Dino De Laurentiis died today at his home in Los Angeles. He was 91. On this Veterans Day, Americans honor those who served in the armed forces. For one World War II vet, the war won't end until he can bring every one of his fallen comrades home. We first reported on his efforts more than 2 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. Bill Whitaker updates this story of determination and the American spirit.
I sometimes have asked myself whether or not this is survivor's guilt.
At 91, World War II vet Leon Cooper is still fighting battles in the South Pacific. He survived the bloody Battle of Tarawa in 1943. More than 1,100 Marines and sailors died, almost 2,300 wounded, 4,600 Japanese killed in the first major battle of the Pacific. Cooper, a landing craft officer, ferried waves of Marines ashore.
And I saw fear in their eyes. All I can think is, could they see the fear in mine?
Now he's fighting so America never forgets.
There are hundreds of guys who lie in Tarawa in unmarked graves.
We first met him at his Malibu home 2 years ago.
I was angry. All those guys dying.
Angry at finding Red Beach, where so many Marines died, was the island's dump, and neither the Pentagon nor politicians seemed to care. But today?
Well, they seem to be paying attention now.
Yeah, because we made a lot of noise.
Following our story and a documentary Cooper helped make, the Pentagon was prodded into action, recently sending a forensics team to Tarawa to search for the remains of fallen fighters.
Being on Marine hollow ground, bringing my fallen brothers home,
That's as good as it gets right there.
The team recovered 2 sets of remains believed to be American and sent them home as heroes. Now, Leon Cooper is a hero to the families of Tarawa's fallen.
My Uncle Frank, Roger Cabral, was an alligator.
He's gotten 500 letters and emails like this.
His body never came home.
Marjorie Coakley, the niece of a Tarawa Marine, lives in the Bay Area.
I wanted to tell him thank you for still caring after all these years and keeping the story alive.
The remains recovered on Tarawa were flown to the military forensics lab in Honolulu for identification. That will take months. As for Leon Cooper,
I'm not going to give up.
He plans to keep fighting to ensure service and sacrifice are remembered and honored. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Thank you, Leon Cooper. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Good night.